On this episode, Ben talks about managing the excessive corn stalk residue this year. Turk gives us an update on the positive grain markets. Tommy puts to rest the yield drag talk about Enlist E3 and LibertyLink GT27 traits compared to Xtend soybeans. And Joe reminds farmers to make sure they are getting their chemical rebates as promised from last spring. Stick around for the corny joke.
Hi, this is Joe Mershman. Welcome to Cup of Joe. Episode number 14, Season 3. Today we have our regulars. We have Tommy and Turk and Ben, and as always, we like to start off with Ben. Ben, we had somebody call in and ask, how do you manage all this corn residue this year? So you got some suggestions?
Absolutely. We want to start with where we would start if we had this question ahead of time. We did have lots of June growth this year with all the heat that we had. We had a lot of space stretched in between nodes on corn, so we had a lot of extra height that we weren't necessarily used to. We have a lot more people using fungicide. We have BT corn, really effective BT corn from the Viptera trait for what we're selling. So we have all these things that are adding into extra residue, and how do we manage it? So one of the things that we talk about is how important it is to spread that residue evenly, and that evenness comes from at the head and at the tail end of the combine. So the first thing we talk about is having effective snapping rolls and chopping corn heads. Chopping corn heads can be a little bit too aggressive for certain growers. If you have lots of flat laying ground, lots of wind blowing, that chopping corn head can turn the stalks and leaves into confetti. You get a good 30-40 mile an hour wind, and your neighbor has all your potassium and nitrogen sitting over in his field from the chopping corn head. So they do have some really, really nice snapping rolls that size and perforate and do some really cool things. Out there in the market, there's 100 different brands of snapping rolls. So there's something to think about there. I have my favorite from non-OEM style products, but we won't necessarily go into that. So that's important. Making sure we have an even spread so we don't have higher concentrations, especially if we're going into a no-till situation or even in a tillage situation. So you want to make sure that your beaters on the back of the combine or your spinning distributors on the back are evenly spreading across. Next thing that we have on the list here is we have the opportunity. So that's what happens at harvest. After harvest, we're a little bit past that now. So what do we do now with the residue that's out in the field? We have strip till, we have conventional tillage, we have minimum till. There's a whole bunch of different options depending on the slopes that we have out in the field. And the more aggressive type of tillage you have, the better you're going to handle the residue, the better you're going to be able to plant into next year. But because of slopes and certain things, we have to watch out for that. So a lot of people are moving towards that more minimum tillage. Those the high-speed discs or the inline style discs, that's a good way to size things and piece things and just integrate and mix just a little bit of that fodder back into the soil to help with residue breakdown. So we're seeing a lot of people lean towards that strip till. A lot of retailers have kind of gone that direction. There's some definite advantages with being able to open up an 8-inch slot out in that field and maintain residue on both sides. Another option that we have is nitrogen application. Some people have suggested applying 30 pounds of UAN over the top to feed the bacteria to help decompose that extra residue that's on top of the soil. It's worked in some occasions. The types of seasons that you have that it works well is going to be the warmer seasons when we have 70, 80 degree falls and that bacteria is heavily breaking it down. You almost want to chase the combine with that sprayer to make sure that's going to happen.
That's 30 pounds of actual, like 28% or 32.
Correct.
And the key thing is if you don't have the temperature, it's not going to work. And it doesn't carry over. In other words, you can't count that nitrogen for next year's inputs.
Correct. Yep. So with that, it's kind of funny. That 30-pound number is interesting because there's about a 30 to 40-pound credit for corn-soybean rotation, and it's not really a credit, but that's the amount of nitrogen that it takes to break down that residue in corn on corn. That's why we always apply extra. So if you can get it on early and you have lots of 70, 80 degree temperatures, you're definitely going to see some advancement in breaking that residue down. But again, we're a little bit further past that at this point. So more than likely, if you have too much residue and there's multiple tillage applications that you can probably do, you can graze it with cattle if cattle work your direction. You can bale off corn stalks. There's something to keep in mind if you're baling off corn stalks. Some guys alternate that so they still have enough residue, so we're not losing soil to rain and snow and wind and all the things that can move soil residue around. But there's lots of different options, and if you have any questions, you can get a hold of us here.
We've seen a lot of batwing mowers running around this year for the first time. I hadn't seen for a while. Even some flail choppers running around. So it's an issue this year that people are recognizing and trying to manage.
Right.
And we're doing more population, higher population, so we're just contributing more to more residue issues. So,
yeah.
Turk, what do you have for us today?
Well, we had some really good news in the grain markets and corn and soybean markets. Got 11 in front of the soybeans. That's for the first time in the last 5 years. So, and there's some analysts saying that we could see 13. Possibly at some point. And the reason for this is the trade's very concerned about dry weather in the U.S. and Brazil from La Nina. It remains to be seen whether La Nina is going to have a major effect on the U.S., but it is having an effect on South America right now. So that's the big news. Plus, the trade's looking at next week's grain stocks report or the world supply reports, and they're expecting that carryover of soybeans to drop on both corn and soybeans. So corn's following along as well. So
well, the demand side's driving it too. I heard there's a bunch of parties came in, and besides China, which we always focus on, but there's a bunch of other countries that came in and bought soybeans too, because they're saying, hey, they're seeing the price go up, so we better get in and get some things covered.
And the U.S. dollar's dropping as well, which makes it cheaper for our foreign buyers.
So there's just a lot of uncertainty about this weather, and I understand even Brazil is going to import some U.S. soybeans to cover. They oversold their position a little bit, and they got to keep their whatever they need for their processing, their plants running. So we're actually going to be shipping beans to Brazil. So the fundamental supply demand has changed a little bit. It's not this doom and gloom anymore. A little bit more in favor of the farmer right now. So that's good news.
Mm-hmm. Their soybeans are going to be probably fairly profitable, it looks like, for a while here. And corn's doing as well.
Well, that's good news for the farmer.
Good news.
Absolutely. Well, Tommy, I see you got a bunch of numbers in front of you, and it says first tests.
Yep.
If anybody's not familiar with first tests, it's pretty much in our entire footprint of where we sell seed. First meaning they claim to be the first folks to post the data. That's since the name first, and it's done on the farms, and it's a good testing system. Are you going to put to bed the age-old question? Does Enlist E3 LibertyLink GT27 yield as good as Xtend soybeans?
Well, I'll let the viewers decide that, but I think there's enough data here to put that to bed for sure, Joe. And this is the top 30 entries at all these locations. And so we'll start at the top here. So with Illinois, with 7 locations, 97 tests for Enlist E3. The test averaged at 67.38 bushel. Xtend at 7 locations with 106 tests at 67.26.
So you're just taking all the soybean varieties that had either Enlist E3 behind their name or Xtend and averaging them up and saying, hey, what's the mass of all the tests, everything that has a trait, average it up and see what the yields are. And it looks like to me, and we are going to post this, looks like to me that there is no difference.
No, absolutely not. And I think that Enlist is definitely carrying the torch in a lot of these tests, if not right behind Xtend. I mean, for example, here in Missouri, out of 49 tests for Enlist E3, it was 59.59 bushels. Extend had 33 tests at 61.25.
And more data to come too.
Absolutely, and there's going to be more to add in here. And you got the LLGT27s that are running right behind it at 60.36 in Missouri. Impressive here in Iowa at 150 tests at 11 locations, 61.35 bushels per acre. for Enlist E3 and 142 tests for the Xtend side, 60.18. So at the end of the day, there is no yield drag with Enlist E3 soybeans.
Statistically speaking, Ben, there's no difference in yield, is there?
Nope.
I mean, so the numbers are very tight. So, where all these numbers are coming out, and, it is a varietal difference. I don't question the numbers, but you're just, you can pick any test and you can win. But anyhow, that's good information.
Yeah, and like Joe said, we're going to have our videographer, Alex Stewart, post this on our at the end of Cup of Joe here. But when you break it down, even down in here in Minnesota, 24 tests, 77.74 bushel per acre for Enlist E3, and right behind it, 77.69 for Xtend, and that's a pretty even test. There's 24 and 25 checks right there. So a lot of good information. And what we found out in the countryside this past week is that the ruling on dicamba has not really swayed the decision on farmers whether to not plant Enlist E3 soybeans. I think the ease of use of being able to spray glufosinate and glyphosate and 2,4-D choline on post, and the ease of use and the freedom and neighbor friendly has really pushed. And the fact of, and then what we're hearing probably a little bit from Joe here in a little bit is that we're going to hear some things coming back on the Ninth Circuit Court, and there's probably going to be some filings going against dicamba. So a lot of uncertainty, and I think a lot of farmers have just, we're not going to deal with it. We're going to move on to what's approved and what's working.
They've recognized that the label is more restrictive, can't use as much, what bigger buffers. There's lots of reasons why farmers are sticking with their guns to plant in the soybeans.
The reward for risk factor is not there. I mean, if Enlist E3 beans were not yielding, I could understand that, but we're not seeing that. We have lots of data to prove that it's as good or better. So,
Well, that's good news from the standpoint of looking at the data and kind of putting that question to bed. I just had a couple things. I read a lot of reports, and one of the things I do is I keep an eye on the competition, and I'm sure they're keeping an eye on us too, which is good. Good competition makes for competitive prices for farmers, and at the end of the day, their profitability is our first concern. But I get a report from an organization that polls retailers, and they're asking questions about seeds and crop protection and things. And about a week ago, they posted under crop protection that Bayer Plus delays pose risk for 2021 share. Those farmers of you that use Bayer Monsanto products, they offered a real nice incentive of anywhere from $8 to $15 of additional money cash back if you jump through all the hoops and whatnot. Well, the retailers are reporting their customers are not getting paid. In other words, it's very slow as compared to the Syngenta programs for such. So my thing to you is, if you got rebates coming, make sure you follow back up with them, because a lot of you bought products based on rebates because it's factored into your cost situation. Make sure you're getting your rebates and follow up with them, because they are at this time being paid. And one of the things I want to point out is that if the rebates are slow to come back from Bayer Monsanto, that may change the retailer in the conversation he has with you which herbicide he wants you to plant use this next year. So just pay attention to what's going on around you and make sure you're not missing out on your rebates. The other news coming from Monsanto Bayer was they put another $10 billion into the Roundup settlement fund, which is still a lot of money. They're still working through that, but it looks like a majority of the lawsuits have been settled. So they're getting past that, and they're continuing to work on that issue. So that's my going after the competition a little bit. You can take it for what it's worth. But I also wanted to note that this past week, Ag Talk, which is a blog that farmers post different things, ask each other questions, and there was one that kind of affected Mershman seeds. Said, anybody have good results this year with Mershman seed? Wanting to try some 3.9 to 4.7s. Anybody have some recommendations? And our customers came immediately back and said, nicest beans and bean treatment I've ever planted. Quality control is good. Yields are good. Can't help you on the varieties because this guy was in a different maturity zone. Another guy said, we've planted Mershman beans for 4 to 5 years, normally our top yielding beans. They seem to be good people to deal with. And then this goes on. If you go on Ag Talk, you can take a look at it, but we basically had nothing but positive comments, and that makes us feel good. That means we're working hard enough to make a difference in farmers' lives and in their profitability. So thank you to all the farmers out there that gave the positive 2 thumbs up for Mershman seeds. If you've not planted Mershman seeds before, check us out. And just to give you a quality control update, we're seeing good quality from both plants this year. As far as germinations are running above 90%. We are tagging 90. Seed size is a little bit smaller. We're seeing more 28 to 3,300 seeds per pound. We'll keep you informed, but so far so good on seed quality. We've had 4, I think, maybe 5 100% bin germs, so we haven't got one in the bag yet, but we've had a lot of 98s and 99s. So we're going to get some bonus germination this year, it looks like, which means as farmers, when you're setting your population, take advantage of that. You don't have to plant quite as thick with the seed treatment that we have and the quality that we're going to give you. Well, I'd like to close out Cup of Joe with a couple of jokes. And this one here is a little bit about me. I don't know if you knew this, but I entered a marathon here this last summer, and the race started, and immediately I was in last place. I mean, what'd you expect? The guy in front of me, who must have been, maybe one of those blue guys or whatever, he immediately started making fun of me. He said, "Hey, buddy, how's it feel to be in last place?" Now, remember, he's in second last place. I said, "You really want to know?" Then I dropped out.
He became last.
Now, this one here, you farmers are going to love, okay? Because you'll get this one. We always like the bar jokes, right? Mm-hmm. Screwdriver walks into a bar, and the bartender says, "Hey, we have a drink named after you." And the screwdriver replies, "You have a drink named Philip?" Now, only a farmer will get that. Maybe a housewife here and there that fixes things around the house. Phillips screwdriver.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, there you go. Anyhow, thanks for watching this week. We hope your harvest went well and continue to go well, and you're getting your tillage done, fertilizer on, had a great yield, prices are good, everything's positive except the election, right? So we'll see how that turns out. Anyhow, take care. We'll see you next week. Stay healthy.